same people, but
recording in progress.
Legally, it was the members.
Doesn't matter because. Right, good afternoon. We'll just give people a little time to join the meeting. I can see lots of people clicking in as I speak, so I'll give it 1 minute before we get going properly. Still clicking through, which is wonderful. So thank you everyone for your time, hugely appreciated. Right, so as it says, huge warm welcome to Cumbria LEP's 2021 annual general meeting. And we are genuinely delighted that so many people have been able to join us today. We've got a fabulous group of speakers, and hopefully what we're going to do today is outline some of the things that the LEP has been doing, but importantly, the things that we're going to be concentrating on given the challenges that are currently faced by our economy and our business community. For those that don't know me, I'm Jo Lappin. I'm the Chief Executive of the Cumbria LEP, and I am today going to be the host for the event, bringing people in as and when on the agenda. So if I can start off, first of all, by introducing Lord Inglewood. Lord Inglewood is the chairman of the LEP, and he would just like to say a few words of welcome before dealing with some of the procedural matters. So over to you, Lord Inglewood.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Jo, for the introduction. And I would like to just add to her remarks about thanking all of those you who've come in on this Zoom call for this AGM. Now, some of you may realize that the LEPs are a slightly unusual sort of organization because we are both public bodies and private bodies at the same time. And the consequence of that is that while our AGM on one level is a private body responsibility, we also have a duty and an obligation to the wider public to let you know what we are doing. And as a result, we have a curious hybrid AGM, of which the first part is held in private, which deals with internal, essentially nuts and bolts matters. And then we have a second part, which is this, which is the occasion when we speak direct as a LEP to everybody in Cumbria, and equally any of you can speak direct to us in return. And I hope you will find this a worthwhile means of hearing what we're doing and, if appropriate, communicating to us your views and concerns. So at this point, just to get this ball rolling, I think I should stop. Now, the way the meeting is going to proceed is that after one or two essential preliminaries, I shall give you an overview from the chair. This is going to be relatively short because it is going to be followed by the deputy chair who's going to talk about investment in the county by the LEP. And then after that, there are going to be a number of individual presentations, some from board members, some from others, which will illustrate some of the things that we're doing. And I hope that the effect of that will be that you will get, as it were, from the horse's mouth, a clear picture of our priorities and our concerns and what we are not only doing now, concerned about now, but what we anticipate be some of the problems in the future and how we're proposing to approach them. But I think that's probably enough from me for the start. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. It's a very, very short welcome introduction, because you move now straight into all of the procedural issues. And these are the things that have been dealt with our board company meeting that took place immediately before this public annual general meeting. So Richard is going to notify you of some of the things that were discussed at that meeting. So firstly, appointments, Lord Inglewood.
Yes, we've had a number of changes over the year, and they include Steve Cole, who is on my far right here at the table, was elected deputy chair. And in addition, Des Moore and Janet Walker have joined us as private sector members, and Janet is the CLEP's SME champion.
And in terms of further appointments,
I would also like to tell everybody that a number of other appointments have been ratified by the Local Enterprise Partnership Board. Allerdale Council's membership, who is represented by Mike Johnson, Carlisle City Council, represented by John Mallinson, and South Lakeland District Council, represented by Robin Ashcroft, who are public sector members representing these local authorities and local government more generally. In addition, Tiffany Hunt has joined as the Lake District National Park Authority's representative.
And turning to reappointments, on the first one, I should probably do this because it actually relates to Lord Inglewood himself. The board agreed that Richard should be appointed for a further 3-year period as chair of the LEP. And in addition, Rebecca Weston has been appointed as the nuclear sector's representative for a further 3-year period. Thank you. And now turning to vote of thanks, we've got some huge thanks to make to our wonderful board members who've stepped down over the last year. As you'll appreciate, if you're having changes, people come in and people go out. And we're sorry to have lost from our company over the last 12 months, Jim Jackson, who was the deputy chair and the private sector representative, and also Carolyn Dodwell, who's private sector representative. And the following have also stood down since this AGM, equivalent AGM last year. Barrow Borough Council, represented by Lee Roberts, Copeland Borough Council, represented by Mike Starkey, and Eden District Council, who are represented by Mary Robinson. For those of you who aren't fully au fait with the way these things work, the district councils alternate membership every 2 years, isn't it? Every 2 years.
And in addition, Peter Allen, who was representing the Lake District National Park Authority, stood down and was being replaced, as I explained, by Tiffany Hunt. Thank you, Richard. And the apologies for the company annual general meeting that took place immediately before this meeting provided to the chair were from Allerdale Borough Council, which was represented by Mike Johnson, Cumbria County Council, represented by Stuart Young, Mike Smith, OBE, South Lakeland District Council, represented by Robin Ashcroft, and Dr. Rebecca Weston. Thank you. And turning to declarations of interest. As we have received no declarations of interest in relation to the company's annual general meeting. Just so that you realise that the LEP, one of the characteristics of the LEP is that it is a company limited by guarantee, which was something I alluded to in my opening remarks. Thank you, Chair. And the final procedural point is the minutes of the previous meeting. All attendees should have received these yesterday in advance of the meeting. Clearly, the board members agreed these, but we would be very happy to take any matters arising that you may want to raise in Q&A. So anything that you've picked up from the minutes that you would be interested in, please do submit something in Q&A. So
I'm not catching anything in Q&A, so I'm assuming that people are content with the minutes and happy for us to proceed and have got no outstanding questions. So what I would now like to do is invite Lord Inglewood to provide his chair overview. This is his view from being engaged in the LEP now for several years on some of the challenges and opportunities that we've faced in the past 12 months. So Lord Inglewood, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Jo. I'm going to make a relatively short overview, because I think that it's important we're absolutely clear about how we on the LEP see what has happened and what is going on. And at the risk of saying something that is incredibly obvious, the year 2021 has been a pretty tough year. After all, we've gone through both COVID and Brexit. And both these things have happened, and we're going to have to live with the consequence for the foreseeable future. What has resulted from these two is that we've seen massive economic disruption and turbulence, and really serious economic damage in all kinds of ways, to differing degrees, right across the Cumbrian economy. Of course, to its credit, the government has carried out a number of mitigating measures, but I don't think we ought to be under any illusion about the kind of problems and issues we're going to be facing in the future. And we mustn't forget that we're not going back to the world that existed 2 years ago. There has been, to at least some extent, a real sea change in our country. On top of this, the administrative and political framework within which the LEP operates has been in a state of flux. I'm not here to talk about local government reorganisation in Cumbria, but I think all of us will be aware of that. And that, anyway, is a matter which is entirely for central government. Rather, from the perspective of LEPs, at a national level, a review is being carried out about where things go from here for local enterprise partnerships. This clearly is going to affect us. But as at the time we speak, a lot of the detail is still very unclear. And my understanding is that we are likely to be more well-informed about how the future might look towards the end of next month and into November. Certainly, we very much hope by the end of the year. In addition, things like the political direction which surrounds economic policy at a national level have been involved, have been slightly blurred, because as everyone will be aware, there was a cabinet reshuffle and a reshuffle further down the government in the last 10 days or so. And we now see that Michael Gove, who previously was not directly involved, is going to be the supremo above quite a lot of what affects us, as indeed there have been changes in some of the cabinet departments which are directly responsible for the work we carry out. So while things may be unclear, there is certainly a lot that's going on. Now, as far as we in Cumbria are concerned, we have carried out, and just recently on the board, received, I think, an extremely good piece of work entitled Cumbria's Economy, Forward Look 2021, which has been written for us by Nickel Economics and the Cumbria Intelligence Observatory. And the authors, Stephen Nickel and Ginny Murphy, have done, I think, an extremely good and comprehensive work, both outlining the general wider economic implications of the events of the last few months and years, and at the same time, providing a series of pointers towards the way the future may go for us. What is encouraging is that the basic analysis of the way in which we think we should go forward has not been fundamentally overthrown by these more recent events, and that the strategy of the county contained in the local industrial strategy, in the most general sense, is a reasonable pointer to the direction of travel we should be taking. However, as I mentioned, there have been a number of serious economic damage and disturbance over the last 18 months, 2 years, and that will need to be addressed. Some of it will entail activities by ourselves. Others, of course, depend on central government decisions over which we have some influence, but no direct control. And one of the things that we've been doing in the LEP over this last period is both directly and indirectly providing information and ideas to central government, partly through the Northern Powerhouse 11, of which we, the Cumbria LEP, are part, partly through the LEP network, and partly through the direct contacts we, and both as members and the officers of the LEP, have with central government. The one theme that I think is common to all the things we are saying is it is very important that the cure for the problems that were posed by COVID must not end up being economically worse than the disease we're trying to cure. Another quick point is net zero, which is very topical in the run-up to COP26. We have a clear approach that the main focus of our work is going to be twin-tracked. First of all, on decarbonising industrial and economic activity in Cumbria, and secondly, clean energy. On top of that, obviously, there are a whole range of other things that are of concern to citizens of Cumbria, and we will hear about some of them in the presentations we're going to receive shortly, and you may want to ask questions about them at a later point in the meeting. So I think I've probably said enough at this point. So first of all, there's going to be the presentations, and secondly, there will be a question and answer session, after which the meeting then will formally come to an end. But before finally stopping my remarks, I would just like to express my personal gratitude, great gratitude, to the staff, to my colleagues on the board, and personally to Joe Lappin, our Chief Executive, whom I know has gone the extra mile during the most recent troubles we've been through. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chair. Next, we're going to hear from our Deputy Chair. Steve Cole is going to talk to us about some of the investments that we've made. We're at a real transitional point in our activity, looking increasingly at moving from big capital programs to providing more revenue support to businesses. So this is very much a watershed moment, and Steve's going to talk about some of the things that we have supported our businesses to achieve, because it's our businesses that have delivered these things on behalf of Cumbria and on behalf of the LEP. So if Steve, you want to say hello, I will bring up your slides again.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for that introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here in the AGM representing the work we've been doing, hopefully the critical work we've been doing in the last 12 months. And I really thank my predecessor, Jim Jackson, and the whole team for doing such a great job. And it was a pleasure to inherit such high quality work. So thanks to the team for that. I'm going to try and just give you an overview of the work done in the previous year, but in the context of the rolling programs of investment that we've been helping to preside over, administer and monitor as part of the LEP program. That's going to look at the growth deal arrangements, growing our potential fund and the Getting Building Fund. And then I will just stop and just reflect about what the future holds and make some comments about how we're trying to prepare ourselves to be best equipped to meet the challenges that business face going forwards and be in the best position possible, subject to the LEP review that Lord Inglewood mentioned. So firstly, on the growth deal, this has been a really substantial part of the LEP programme in recent times. You can see from the slide a significant fund that's with 60 million, just over 60 million pounds worth of investment has been able to unlock 134 million pounds worth of overall industrial private sector contribution. So this is a really important programme. And it's now financially complete. That's quite important. We have ceased or closed down rather allocations to new projects. And our focus on the growth deal is really about monitoring the delivery and the outcomes that we expected this transformational investment to deliver for the area. And I'll summarise that in a moment. There's been a significant quantity of projects supported, so 34 projects supported, and covering a good breadth of the sectors that we need to support in the county, but of course, trying to dock that with the priorities that we'd identified in the industrial strategy. So covering transport, skills, obviously flood recovery, that remains a key area of resilience for us, and more besides, including the digital agenda. So Joe, if you could move us forward, I'll just try and give a flavour for the outcomes that we are monitoring through this crucial investment fund. So there remains some areas of focus, as you may be able to tune into on the slide here. We are very focused on securing and monitoring the outcomes with regards to the skills delivery, the jobs created, and making sure that the housing numbers are delivered upon. Really strong forecasts from all the projects, so we're confident that there's a basis for those deliverables and outcomes to be achieved. But nonetheless, we will maintain focus on the monitoring of those outcomes. But it's really pleasing to see where we've already exceeded the targets that were set during the process of approving these projects, with some significant developments, and again in key areas for the county. So it's very positive to see the learning opportunities already significantly exceeded. If we look at the premises that have been created to help businesses, a significant result, and really importantly, as we know how crucial this is for the county of Cumbria, is the progress that's been made on digital and superfast broadband services. Those will hold us in good stead as we then consider building on that going forwards. There's still much to be done, of course, but I think we can take positive position on this, and we need to recognise the hard work that's been done within those projects to deliver those outcomes to date. The next area is our Growing Our Potential Fund. Now, this is a really important programme, again, delivers a lot of progress for us, and you can see that there's been a sizable number of projects that have been positively impacted by the Growing Our Potential area. And a bit, as Joe indicated before, the real focus in this area is about delivery. It's about moving to making sure that the forecast leverage that we see summarised here, built on what has already been created, that we can start to see those outcomes arrive. So we remain very focused on that, and in our monthly reviews and again through our formal governance processes, we'll continue to report progress on the Growing Our Potential Fund. Now, the Getting Building Fund, this was an important additional opportunity for us for 2021, against obviously a very difficult backdrop coming out of the pandemic and looking at the impacts of some of the economic challenges that Lord Inglewood was summarising. So this gave us the opportunity for an additional £10.5 million of government funding. The key thing was that we needed these monies to be spent by the end of March next year. So we had to identify projects and try and prioritise projects that could demonstrate comprehensively that they were able to meet that timing and that schedule objective. And we thought very carefully about that, and we viewed the applications, and the two projects of note that have been given support is the infrastructure project at Bothell with the modifications to the highway there, and importantly in the supporting homes objectives we've got is the enabling works for the Marina Village in Barrow and Furness. Both, again, very much priorities in the industrial plan. It's about enabling the area to have the right quality of housing, the right resilience in infrastructure. So we're very pleased to be able to put this money to good work. And we're seeing strong progress with both of those programs to date, and we continue to monitor those through to their conclusions at the end of March next year. So just a few words on going forwards. What I really want to underline for the AGM is that our focus is on delivery. We've really focused on monitoring the progress that the projects are making, assisting with trying to resolve issues as we encounter them, and making sure that the outcomes that are are committed to are delivered, and that we can see the value created for the citizens of Cumbria and for the businesses in Cumbria. That's the real focus for us. We are looking at how we can be in best place to support future programmes. And of course, we stay very tuned into what's arriving or what we anticipate through the Levelling Up Fund, the needs that the county will have for that. And that's got to be grounded in the right industrial strategy focused on the right priorities for us. So as we develop and renew that coming out of the pandemic, and we reflect on the real challenges through the economic assessments we've been doing, we want to shift our focus onto additional funding and helping to link businesses and requirements to government funding where we're able to. Just one other point from me, a key aspect of the team here is also being as effective as we can do to support Jo in the executive in her activities at the LEP. There's a fantastic team in the LEP, and the board is working together on making sure that we are adding value. We're investing in ourselves and as a team together. And we've got a board development day coming up on the 8th of October, where we're seeking to make sure we come together around a common set of objectives and concepts and help to provide the right guidance and input from the broad industries that we all represent to give assurance that the LEP's activities are meeting the requirements of all of the businesses that we have in Cumbria. So continued development of the board with Lord Inglewood and Jo will remain a key area of focus for us. I think, Jo, that's me done. We're going to hear more now from some fantastic case studies. So you'll hear directly from the horse's mouth, as it were, from James Walker, from Firehouse, and from Mitchell's Auction Company. So I think it's probably better to let them do the talking, and you can hear, hopefully, some positive updates on progress made. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Really good overview of our investment programmes. As Steve said, we're going to actually have 4 case studies because Sarah, one of our board directors, has very kindly agreed to provide a presentation on behalf of Brewery Arts. Miriam Randall would have loved to have been here, but unfortunately she's on holiday. Not for her, clearly she's delighted she's on holiday, but unfortunate for us. So Sarah is going to provide that for us. So what we've got in terms of our case studies is we've got the first presentation is from Mark Brook at James Walker, who is going to talk about the growth deal investment. And the other 3 case studies were all through our Growing Our Potential programme. And really should mention Steve Curl, one of our other board members who chaired the group that made the decisions on that. And Growing Our Potential, as Steve has already said, was very much designed to be accessible to all of our businesses. So it's really great to hear what they're going to have to say to us today. But without further ado, can I welcome Mark Brook, who's going to provide our first presentation. And I will apologise to Mark because I'm driving the slides. So if they don't go perfectly in sync, it is entirely my fault, Mark. So over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Introduce myself, I'm Mark Brook. I'm the Manufacturing Director for James Walker. Very pleased to be presenting today and explaining the support we've had from the team at Cumbria LEP and other partners. Next slide. First of all, the question is, who are James Walker? We're a long-established business. We've been in business for around 139 years. Independent, private UK manufacturing and engineering business. And we've been particularly in Cockermouth in Cumbria for over 50 years now. Next slide. So we manufacture predominantly in the UK, but we export our products globally, and we also have other manufacturing and sales locations around the world. Our biggest sites, our manufacturing sites, are in the UK, and obviously our biggest one is here in Cockermouth, where we produce high-performance elastomers for critical industries. Next slide, Joe. So the products we go into, you won't have heard of us, but we you will have heard of many of our end customers and applications we provide into the nuclear industry, defence, oil and gas, pharmaceutical, renewable energies. So critical sealing, things like nuclear transportation flasks, defence and aerospace critical products. Recently, we've been supporting Pfizer with clamps, hygienic seals for the production of vaccines in the US and Europe. Next slide. So one of the key reasons is we received a support and grant funding, and the question is, why was the grant needed? Hopefully this picture says it all. That's our factory in the middle, located in Cockermouth. And our factory was flooded twice within 6 years. So what was described widely or wrongly in the news as a 1 in 1,000 year event is actually a 1 in 1,000 chance in any given year. So we've had it twice in 6 years, fingers crossed. This is the 6-year anniversary of the last one. So hopefully we won't be seeing the same again this year. Obviously that caused major business continuity and disruption to some of our key customers. There was ongoing insurance costs and a real risk that we, as a business, we weren't going to be insured for our ongoing operations. So at the time, we were looking at relocating globally into our other facilities in the UK. At that time, we were supported by the LEP. So next slide, Joe. So we have at our factory in Cockermouth, we have over 400 skilled workers, mainly in manufacturing and technical roles. 95% of the workforce are local to Cumbria, mainly Cockermouth, Workington, Whitehaven. Our overall GVA as to the base model is over 31.6 million direct and induced value add to the local economy. So the grant we received was, we spent £2.5 million of a 2.6 million grant. So we were within budget and within time. And we were supported by the LEP, Cumbria County Council, BAYS, local MPs, various partners who supported us through this. We went through a tender programme and we were awarded to Stories Construction and Cluttons, who had previously done a similar scheme earlier with Pladis and McVitie's up in Carlisle. So the deliverables are the retention of over 400 skilled workers, a commitment to create an additional 30 jobs by 2023. We were, after the first 2 years, we've delivered on that. We've had a slight disruption this last year under COVID, but we're expecting to continue those commitments, and ongoing investment in the business of 9.8 million over 5 years. So what that delivered is basically we were able to, through flood defences, we sheet piled the perimeter of all the buildings, putting pumping stations, next slide, Joe, attenuation swales, which, so one of the key things we didn't want to do is to cause an impact on our neighbours and the local community. So we had to offset. You can see the attenuation swales there at the side of the building and directing it within our own boundaries. The next slide, Jack. Additional elements there are pumping stations, and you can see there the height of the flood defences in the scale next to the, while they go 6.8 metres underground into the bedrock, and at some points over 1.62 metres above the ground. It's the largest industrial defence scheme in the UK, or it was at the time, not been told any since. And yeah, that's in summary. Hopefully I've kept to the 5 minutes, Joe. Probably sped through that quite quickly. And that is really how, as a business, as a local employer within Cumbria, we're very proud. I'd like to thank the support that we got from the LEP, the Cumbria County Council, and all the partners, particularly Cumbrian and Liz Watson, who helped us tremendously through this process. So any other businesses who are maybe on the call, you know, please get involved in the LEP. They have great support, great experience from many walks of life, and it certainly helped us as a business safeguard those jobs and maintain our operations within Cumbria. Thank you.
Mark, thank you very much. That was excellent. And thank you for the very, very positive feedback about the LEP and some of our team. It's very kind and really appreciated. But in terms of feedback to yourself, can I say a huge thank you to you as well for the time that you commit? You're a very committed member of our Business and Economic Response and Recovery Group. You contribute to our Advanced Manufacturing Group. So it's very, very much appreciated. Thank you. And can I just ask people, remind you that we have got Q&A. Hopefully Mark is here with us for the duration. So if you've got any questions on the investment, please do put them in Q&A and we'll pick them up in the panel session later. So thank you for that, Mark. And now we said we'd move on to our growing our potential investments. And the first update we're going to have is from Donovan Duplessis. And Donovan is a director at Firehouse, and he's going to talk to us about the Growing Our Potential investment that he received. So Donovan, again, driving the slides, anything goes wrong, my fault entirely. But if you can just indicate when you'd like to move forward.
That's great, thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction, Joe. As a company, we form part of a group of companies. So our group is called Bluestone Worktops. We're based in Kendal, and so we've got the two subsidiary companies, Firehouse, which in this case has been supported by the LEP, and we've also got Bluestone Worktops, so that manufactures worktops, so nationwide as well. The Firehouse business dates back, and the group dates back to 2008. We've always been based in Kendal, and but the Firehouse business historically has only been quite a small part of our group. The entire group in 2021 is set to turn over around 5.5 to 6 million, and in total we employ now 53 employees. So we're not a very big business, but we have been growing in that time. So, but the Firehouse business for us, if you could change slides for me, please, Joe, that'd be great. Thank you. The fireplace business historically has only been turning over around 500,000. It specializes in bespoke fireplaces, wood burning stoves, and heating appliances. And the group saw very big growth in 2016 when we were supported by the Cumbria Chamber of Commerce, and we built a purposeful built factory just on the back of Homebase in Kendal. But the fireplace business for us, for both Tom and myself, was a bit of a difficult one to keep growing. It established itself well within the Cumbria area, offering market-leading brands such as Morso, Chesney's fireplaces. But one of the difficulties we historically had was that it was a very seasonal business. We would, come winter time, be extremely busy, and come summer times, not so busy at all. So historically, that business only sort of employed, in 2019, had 4 employees. The other limitations on that business is that we had a very small showroom, which was a bit hidden away. It was on the back of Mincefield Industrial Estate, which also flooded in 2015. And we didn't have running water or gas to the building. And as a consequence, also had quite poor working conditions for staff. It wasn't horrendous, but it wasn't great. You had to, for example, the toilets and kitchen area were across in a different building. So attracting talented, young talent or local talent, we found difficult. And then retaining staff as well was, because it's a very sort of technical product as well. So on the installation side, so you'd spend a lot of time and investment training staff, and it was difficult to retain. So for us, we created an objective to move the business forward and to make it grow within the local area, was to try, and the main solution was to try and find any premises. Kendal is not, from our experience, a very easy place to find commercial premises. And finding something suitable took us some time, but we wanted something really the way we could showcase our product ranges, create new opportunities by bringing in new product ranges that would take out the seasonal variations within our business. And one of the ways we came up with taking the seasonal variation out was by bringing what we now call our outdoor living department, which is specializing in pizza ovens, barbecues, but they're not just standard sort of appliances. They're more designer-led, etc. But we managed to bring those in, as well as we started off with wood-fired cedar wood hot tubs and bringing them in from Canada. These have been extremely successful for us as well now since this project. The next slide, please, Joe. Thank you. So for us, locating a premises was a challenge, but we found an opportunity within the station yard next to Atlantis Kitchens. The building itself, when we started off, the previous occupier was Enterprise Car Rental. The building itself was not very attractive at all, to the extent the next door car dealership, David Hayton's, actually built a fence around it to try and hide it, which they're now wanting to remove since our project, because we've done something quite different with it. But what attracted us was the location. It's highly visible from the main road in Kendal. It's also located right next to the train station. And for us, that was quite a big thing, because the cedarwood hot tubs, we focus on nationwide. It's not just a local business for us. And we're attracting a lot of sales and clientele from London, Cornwall, Devon, down south. And we wanted to create an environment where clients could easily, from London, jump on the train, come and visit a destination showroom. So being right next door to the train station was excellent for that purpose. So the plot as well is quite a large plot. It's susceptible, quite busy, quite big on the back as well, and gave us plenty of outdoor space for the outdoor living products. So also next door to Atlantis, we've got a very special relationship with them, with Bluestone, as one of our clients. But and we've known them for many years, but they attract a very similar clientele to what we want for Firehouse. So naturally, there's for us was another reason to go. Next slide, please, Joe. Thank you. So to make this project happen, we needed to do quite a bit of work to the actual premises, and it in the end entailed demolishing about 70–80% of the original building and then rebuilding it to a new standard. For us, there was not just the investment into the property, but it was also the cash flow implications we would have once the business starts growing. So, and this is where we were very grateful for the investment from the LEP. The main target for us was to try and grow the business, and the original project, projected turnover towards the right of the screen, was to take the business from 2019 at 517,000 to ultimately try and achieve around about 1.5 million in around 2023 to 2025. We've had an extremely successful year, or 18 months, and which has been quite phenomenal, really. The project, we're still ongoing with some of the outdoor displays. We've had quite a few sort of delays, etc., on building materials, and it was sort of a perfect storm with Brexit and COVID, and then also supply chain issues with materials coming from all around the world. But we have managed to already increase the staffing levels to 11, where we created 7 new positions and safeguarded the 4 that we already had. We've also projecting to turn over between 1.8 million and 2 million in 2021. So we're quite far ahead. The success within this investment has actually been much greater than we first anticipated. Next slide, please, Joe. For us, the solution was the biggest challenge really was at the beginning of this project was we found the premises in 2019 and started speaking to the gentleman who owned it, and we went quite far trying to commit to this project when COVID sort of almost took the middle stump out, and it was by introduction by Adrian Lockham that he introduced me to the LEP, and I started speaking to Liz Watson, and she was absolutely fantastic. And I must say thank you very much, Liz, for all your support, as well as with Lee Blackwell and Corinne Watson. You both were fantastic as well. So, and very much understanding as well with the delays that we suffered due to sort of that perfect storm. So I just want to say thank you very much. Without this support, we couldn't have made this project happen. And we definitely wouldn't have been able to sort of to continue the growth within the business, because we would have had some severe cash flow issues within those issues as well. Next slide, please, Joe. So this is the result, sort of the new showroom, going from the previous premises, and sort of some of the other things that have happened along the way, which sort of was quite remarkable really, is as this project started had traction, we were starting to get larger market-leading brands started approaching us, such as Jacuzzi. So we've now become the sole retailer and dealership for Jacuzzi for the northwest of England. So stretching up all the way from Carlisle down to Preston. And that's been a phenomenal addition to the business as well. We've also had other market-leading brands like Yotel and Drew within the fireplace industry also approach us, saying they've heard about what we're doing and they would love to be a part of our business, which previously I don't think we could have done. And this is some of the reasons why the business is expanding as much as it is now. And we look forward to 2022. We're now projecting around a £2.5 million business, possibly even in 2022. So next slide, please. So the next step for us as a business really was that we're discussing on, and something that Tom and I have been working on very, very closely this year, is the cedarwood business. We started with this about 5 years ago with wood-fired cedarwood hot tubs. And we brought them in largely because of the wood-fired and the wood-burning element, and it being such a beautiful natural product. We've had a lot of supply chain issues because they're made out in Canada by Northern Lights, which is within the industry internationally a market leader, and we're the UK distributor and dealership. But due to all the sort of delays and supply chain issues we've suffered, we wanted to start developing this product ourselves. And we've done quite a bit of market research, and we're actually in the final stages of launching our very own product. So for us, the next stage now for the Firehouse will hopefully be in end of 2021/2022, is to actually start producing and creating a manufacturing business here in Kendal that will produce our very own cedarwood hot tubs. And we're hoping that within the next 2 to 3 years, that will generate another 4 to 6 positions, skilled employees, and hopefully generate around 750,000 turnover to our business on top of the rest of the business. So again, I just want to say thank you very much to the LEP and for everything, for all your support. Without this, we definitely couldn't have done it. It's been an extremely challenging 18, 20 months, and to deal with everything we've had. If you weren't so understanding at times, I think I would have gone a lot grayer as well. So I just want to thank you for everything you've done, and a special thank you to Liz as well. She was fantastic. So I just want to say that again. So thank you, Joe. So.
Donovan, thank you ever so much. That was a great overview of the investment. And I think what it showed was how something that wasn't that huge an amount of money from the LEP made a massive difference to you moving your growth plans forward. And again, thank you for the lovely, lovely feedback on members of the team. I'm sure they'll be very, very pleased to hear it. And unfortunately, Donovan can't stay for the whole of the session, but if there are any questions that you do want to ask, please put them in Q&A and we can pick them up outside of the meeting and get back to people, if that's okay, Donovan.
That'd be fantastic. Yes, thank you very much.
No problem. So thank you once again. And the next of our Growing Our Potential case studies, I'm delighted to introduce Stephen Revel. He is a director at Mitchell's Auction Company Limited. And Stephen's going old school today. He's going to do the talking rather than the slides. So Stephen, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Jo. Yes, maybe with apologies for the old school, but hopefully I can get the key messages across. As Jo said, I'm a director of Mitchell's Auction Company Limited in Cockermouth, and I'd like to think of us as a core Cumbrian company. We've been around since 1873. We're a private company, but with a significant number of private shareholders, mainly farmers and others who use our services. So a very local company in all senses. We operate from 2 sites, a town centre site, including Viva, our coffee shop, where our furniture auctions take place, and a much larger site, the Lakeland Agricultural Centre, which is on the outskirts of Cockermouth and where we have our main livestock auction facility. In addition, we have several tenants on that site, but also have a small land bank, if you like, for the continued development of that site. The business has 3 main sources of revenue: the livestock auctions, the furniture auctions, and the income from our properties that are let to third parties. And as a board, we had several conversations about the sustainability of the company, particularly over the long term, 10 years plus. What is the shape of the auction business going to be? A conversation that started with Brexit, how was that going to impact livestock auctions, but then developed into a broader conversation around, will auctions be around in 10 years' time, whether for livestock or for furniture in the way they are today. And we're already seeing our furniture business move to an online format and away from the traditional, if you like, physical format. So we were looking at the long-term sustainability of business. So whilst continuing to support our existing businesses, we were looking at how to diversify and how to further develop our properties. As a result of that consideration, we identified that there was a need for smaller premises to rent for small workshops and business startups. So actually the firehouse story that we've just heard, where they were looking for premises, was a story we were hearing around Cockermouth and the broader West Cumbria. And we felt we had a very good site to actually meet that need for small commercial units. And we had the added advantage of good footfall, given the other tenants on our site, like Atkinson's and like Cars, and very good access. So we felt we had a very strong basis to develop some commercial units. However, we paused when we realized the overall cost of that project would be well in excess of £500,000. And we have an interesting feature as a business. We have a high need for a great deal of cash liquidity, particularly because in both our core businesses, livestock and furniture, we pay out before we receive. And therefore, we do carry quite a large cash margin as an integral part of our business, which we think is necessary. And we have a somewhat cautious approach to borrowing. So in short, we were quite nervous about proceeding given the significant cost. And so we started a conversation with LEP to see how they could possibly help. And indeed, LEP did help. They provided a grant that made the difference. We would not have probably gone ahead with this project without that support. And so LEP definitely enabled us to proceed with the project that has now come to fruition. We also used some of our own resources, and we also borrowed from the banks. And so in that sense, there was a real partnership to bring the project to fruition. So we now have up to 12 individual letting units. Some have gone in doubles, but that may change over time. So we have 12 units, and they're now all let and in the process of being occupied, and indeed some are already up and running. And one of the pleasing outcomes has been the fact they've all gone to local businesses. And so there is very much this local feel. Chairman referred to sustainability and the importance of sustainability, and that's certainly something that we focused on during the development phase. So, for example, have met and exceeded some of the insulation requirements to make sure these units are fit for a very long future. And we're currently looking at fitting various electric vehicle charging units, again, in line with the government's policy of moving us all to electric vehicles. We felt it was very important to consider that as part of this development for our tenants and for the visitors to those tenants. Jobs will be both safeguarded and created. There is, I think, both a direct effect and a multiplier effect, in a sense, with our project. At Mitchell's, through having a clear, sustainable income from these additional units that we will rent, we've helped, we believe, diversify Mitchell's income and sustain Mitchell's income so that we can remain a local employer and to continue as a successful company. But also, there will be jobs created at all the tenants of these units. Again, we're already seeing that. And so there is a definite multiplier effect. And we're hopeful that the scheme could create about 30 jobs over a 5-year period, although I suspect it may be even quicker. I would, as the other speakers have done, like to thank LEP for the support we received. They were extremely helpful, the team, throughout the application process, guiding us through the forms that needed to be completed and the issues we need to address. But I think where, for me and for Mitchell's, that LEP stood out, and the team at LEP stood out, was the help we got in the various headwinds that we faced during the build phase for this project. Lord Inglewood has already mentioned Brexit and COVID, and the challenges that double whammy presented us were definitely to the fore, as I'm sure anybody who is trying to construct anything at the moment will know. And to Brexit and COVID were added two other important features. One, the labour shortages in the construction industry at the moment, and also dear old Cumbrian weather, which never quite did what we wanted it to do at the relevant time. And those headwinds caused delays. They caused a whole number of challenges. And just the support we received, the flexibility we received from LEP and the team at LEP was mission critical to seeing us through those headwinds that were certainly, I would like to think, once in a 1,000-year type headwinds, in the sense of them all coming together and creating the problems that they did, that I'm sure many others are familiar with. And above all, I think the team at LEP worked with us to achieve a successful outcome and some great units, adding not only to Mitchell's property portfolio, but we think providing a really valuable multiplier effect to the local economy by providing those small size commercial units to small businesses, to startups, and people needing small workshops. So we were part of the Growing Our Potential program, and I would like to put on record our thanks to LEP for helping us grow our potential. So with that, I'll end my remarks, but happy to answer any questions.
Stephen, thank you very much, and loved your closing statement. Very well done. It was, for me, a brilliant story because it wasn't just about growing your business. It was actually about providing space for others to develop and grow their business. So wonderful story. Again, if you've got any questions for Stephen, please do feed them into the chat and we'll look to raise them. So thank you once again. Fabulous story, and all of the issues you've raised we'll pick up on later in terms of our economic forward look. So thanks again, Stephen. And I did say earlier that Sarah had very kindly agreed to step in and become, excuse me, Miriam Randall for the afternoon. And this is our final case study. And this was very much about a board decision that the LEP wanted an active role in placemaking and place shaping, and recognise the really important role that culture plays in terms of that placemaking role. So there was a conscious decision that we would like to support some of our cultural organisations to develop and to grow their businesses. And really what Sarah's going to do is the highlights of the investment that was made in brewery arts. So Sarah, thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much. I'm more than happy to present a couple of slides about this. I think Brewery Arts Centre is a venue that's valued both by the visitor economy and by the community in Kendal greatly. And equally, I think that ability to show the breadth of sectors that LEP's been able to invest in. This is a arts and heritage venue and a not-for-profit third sector organisation as well. I think it's a great example, as well as what has been evidenced by some of the other businesses, of how funding from CLEP has enabled a portfolio of funding to be leveraged from a range of areas. So that's certainly what Brewery Arts were able to do. They had a capital project programme for 2021 and finally secured an investment portfolio of £850,000 to future-proof this, what is definitely a flagship cultural venue in the county. They were able to upgrade their digital infrastructure, install live streaming equipment, and really improve the kind of contemporary nature of the venue. I was there very recently myself, and it's great to see the work that's happened, and also purchase equipment for digital skills that I'll mention in a minute. So this portfolio of funding included grant funders like Arts Council England, the money from the LEP, SLDC, Cumbria County Council, Kendal Town Council, and a number of trusts, and then direct to public donations as well, just showing how the third sector generally is able to draw funding from a range of areas. The next slide, please. So through the Growing Our Potential funds, CLEP were happy to contribute £100,000, which went predominantly towards a new digital media hub, which unlocked a range of opportunities that fit really very well with our general strategy to support skills and innovation within the county. They're able to develop a new games design course in partnership with Kendal College. Great to see emerging technologies and skills for young people being further developed. Developed courses and workshops in music production, filmmaking, animation, and also gave them the opportunity for some income generation through a private hire venue that's now available, and secured employment of very specialist technicians, tutors, and creative producers there. So the wider project, and I do encourage people to go and visit, has really enabled a complete refurb of all the public spaces. It's now, it was always a great venue, but it's significantly improved, I would say. So with bigger cinema screens, very comfy seating, projections, surround sound, and much more efficient digital systems for programming, ticketing and sales, in part, I guess, driven by the pandemic, but equally the way people engage with those kind of systems has changed significantly. And really better facilities for hosting local, national and international festivals. I know Kendal Mountain Festival has been there for a number of years, and I think there's great opportunities to further develop that as part of the visitor economy offer, and a really attractive venue for commercial hire and events. So I don't think I'm able to do Miriam justice, but hopefully that gives a bit of an overview of the sorts of things that LEP's been very keen to invest in, and the sorts of results that our very innovative business community has been able to bring forward. Thank you, Joan.
Oh, thank you very much, Sarah. And as Sarah said, this was funded via Growing Our Potential. We also made an investment into Tully House's refurbishment, and that was a more significant investment. And one of the reasons why we were seriously looking at placemaking and place shaping is one of the biggest challenges Cumbria faces is its declining population. So we really need to have facilities that attract people to want to come and live and work here. So an important part of that retention and attraction policy in the LEP. So thank you to all of our investment case studies, some great stories, and this is what it's all about. This is about supporting our businesses to grow. So really, really good examples there. So thank you to everybody. Moving on, I'd like to invite one of our other board members to now join us. Professor Andrew Wren is our diversity champion, and Andrew is going to talk about what we've been doing on diversity and inclusion. So Andrew, over to you, please.
Hi, Jo. Thank you very much for that. I've been fascinated to hear what presenters have said so far. It has been really interesting. I'm thoroughly enjoying it, so pleasure to be here. Yes, so as Jo said, I am the diversity and inclusion champion for Cumbria Local Enterprise Partnership, and I get the opportunity to present to you today. And I'm also going to get the chance, which I've always wanted, to be Professor Chris Whitty and say, next slide, please, but don't do it yet, Jo. So on the board, we are firmly committed to the membership of the board and all of its sub-boards and panels being as diverse and inclusive as they possibly can be. And it's really important that those bodies are representative of the area that they serve, i.e. Cumbria. So as part of that, the LEP has made a number of commitments, and you can see on the slide there, there's a commitment to have gender equality on the board by 2023, to increase the number of members and panel members with protected characteristics, so they are represented right across the structure of the LEP. And I'm sure you're aware that protected characteristics include characteristics such as ethnicity, disability, gender, sexual orientation, gender reassignment, marital status, etc. And we're also very committed to making sure that the LEP is represented in terms of an age balance and also geographically and sectorally balanced in terms of its representation. So in other words, that members come from all four corners of Cumbria, and also that all different sectors of the economy are represented right across the LEP structure. So next slide, please, Jo. Thank you. So what progress have we made against those commitments? Well, we've achieved a 35% gender equality balance on the board, and we achieved that in this year in 2021, and we still aim for that gender balance by 2023. We've achieved a gender balance in the chairing of our sector panels, And we also have improved representation on the wider protected characteristics right throughout the LEP structure. So if you can move on again, Joe. Something that has been really close to my heart, and I know of all the board members, is making sure that there is a breadth of age range represented throughout the LEP governance structure. And that is sometimes difficult, as you can imagine, because the level of expertise and knowledge that we expect from our board members often means that those board members are on the older side of the range, as opposed to young people sort of 18 to 35. And the average age, and this is fairly typical of LEP boards generally, and many boards, is that the average age is higher than the average age of the population that they serve. So in order to be able to look to address that, the LEP board thought long and hard as to what we could do. And we decided that it would be most appropriate to set up what you may call a shadow board, but what we've called the Futures Forum, with membership across Cumbria for young people aged 18 to 35. The Futures Forum is represented throughout the governance structure, and it feeds in and out of boards, and members of the Futures Forum actually sit on the sector panels. In order to be able to get the Futures Forum together, we advertised for young people aged 18 to 35 across Cumbria, and we had a huge interest with an outstanding calibre of applicants. It was absolutely amazing. So we went through quite a rigorous selection process, and following that, we formed the board, and that was just before the pandemic, unfortunately. So that the Futures Forum haven't actually had the opportunity to meet too many times to get together and to gel as a board, but that's something that we're now looking at being able to do. As I said, the age range is well represented. All areas of Cumbria are represented, and the Futures Forum members come from a very diverse range of sectors where they work, and also obviously we have students as well in there, which is really important. It's fully formed now, it's becoming mature, and the board, the Futures Forum meets in the same cycle as the LEP board, considers the LEP papers in advance of meetings, and then has the opportunity to feed back into the LEP board any thoughts and any ideas that they have from a young person's perspective, which is absolutely crucial if we're aiming to be completely inclusive and diverse as a LEP board. So rather than me carrying on talking to you about the Futures Forum, because clearly I'm not a young person in the 18 to 35-year-old category, I know it's hard to believe, I'd much rather hand over to one of the Futures Forum members. So now I'll hand over to Morgan. So over to you, Morgan.
Hello, thank you very much, Andrew. So I'm Morgan, and I'm a data scientist at GlaxoSmithKline, and I specialise in biopharm and steriles manufacturing. And the reason why I'm here is to raise awareness about the forum and the work that we're doing and its future plans. And the reason why I joined the forum was to sort of gain a better understanding and support the Cumbria's economy by bringing my specialist area to the forum in terms of data and technology, and in the hope that by using it, we'll be able to get further insight into Cumbria and help drive those decisions in Cumbria's development from a young person's perspective. Next slide, please, Joe. So in terms of the Futures Forum's purpose, it is to provide a really strong voice for the young people in Cumbria towards the economic development, and to also be a proactive forum that will then deliver results and support and guide the LEP in its decisions, actions for its priorities and investments. The progress this year that we've made, so we have recently recruited 5 new members, and I am one of them that's been recently recruited, and we have also developed 3 work plans and are now beginning to implement the objectives within those. We've also held our first event on creating Cumbria's sustainable future. And we've also aligned members, as Andrew said, to those LEP governance groups. So now we're all set up and we're structured with 18 young professionals, and we're ready to represent the young people at a strategic level to make impact. Next slide, please, Joe. In terms of our futures framework, this outlines how we're going to make this impact that I mentioned before. And within this, we've defined 3 work areas: empowering Cumbria, promoting Cumbria, and sustainable Cumbria, which our team have then developed the work plans for to support the LEP's vision and our engagement within the wider groups. So just to quickly run through our 3 work areas and give a little bit of an insight as to what they are. So in terms of empowering Cumbria, then that is to sort of assist the LEP's wider governance structure and the businesses and education and skills providers to develop plans and strategies, which then are to enhance our education and skills offering. It's also to be an influencer in the major infrastructure developments, from whether it's housing to digital infrastructure, and also the regeneration projects, and finally to support the restart, rethink, reboot plans. In terms of promoting Cumbria, that is to sort of celebrate Cumbria as I don't know, an awe-inspiring and unique place to earn and learn, and to enjoy and maybe lay your roots. And to do this, we'll be talking with the young people in order to gather their thoughts and views on very important issues that they care about, ranging from employment to climate change and even clean energy growth. And last but not least, sustainable Cumbria, that is to proactively promote and encourage our residents, businesses, to make a step towards the low carbon economy, and to also identify the opportunities where the LEP and its wider bodies can take advantage of whether it's government grants and funding initiatives to improve natural environment or decarbonise our economy. Next slide, please, Joe. So to ensure that we're working as one team, this is our current structure. So within this one team, we've got a really diverse range of backgrounds, from educational and technical, professional trades, and private and public sectors. And within those, we've aligned 3 sub-teams, which consist of 3 to 5 team members. And those are then aligned to each of our work areas that I just mentioned before. And we've also got around that our communication leads, an EDI lead, and support team members. Next slide, please, Joe. So this now leads us on to our call to action. So the Futures Forum, as it was discussed, is now fully set up, and we've got our work plans developed and 3 fully resourced work area teams. Now we need to transition from to the delivery and implementation stage, to collaborate with the LEP and partners across Cumbria. And to do this, we need and want your help. So the partnership with the LEP and its partners with our young people is crucial, because we can't do this alone. And the benefit is we can work together on important matters to unleash the potential of Cumbria through partnership. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Morgan. And thank you to Andrew and Morgan for that fabulous double act. The work of the Futures Forum is a real exemplar, and they are a hugely committed team and doing some great stuff. And as you can see, we've got an absolute wealth of talent. Morgan is a new starter and is very happy to come and present on behalf of the group. So that's the sort of strength and depth that they've got in their team. Professor Wren, there were a few people who were concerned when you mentioned old people being on the board. I think that took some, swallowing by some of us. So you can really look to speak for yourself on that one. But that was brilliant. And I hope that reassures everybody that we take the issue of diversity and inclusion extremely seriously. And I think at times we can think, oh, it's just one of those things, but it's not. It's actually crucially important, because We've talked already about Cumbria's declining working age population. If we want people to come here, we've got to be a warm, welcoming, diverse and inclusive area. So this work is really, really important. So thank you very much to both of you. Really appreciated. Next, we're going to hear from our LEP Scrutiny Board Chair, Councillor Bill Waring. In terms of our requirements as a LEP, we've got to have the highest standards of governance, transparency and propriety. And part of that process is the LEP Scrutiny Board. What happens several times a year, Lord Inglewood and myself are asked to account to representatives from all of the local authorities in Cumbria for the activity of the LEP. Bill chairs that group scrupulously, and I can promise he genuinely does look to hold us to account. So, Bill, without further ado, can I welcome you to the meeting and just to give your reflections from a scrutiny perspective, please?
Thanks very much, Jo, and thank you for inviting me here, members. Before I do start my my report on the scrutiny committee's overview of the LEP, I'd just like to say to the young gentleman who's just given that report is we could do with more of that young gentleman in local government, because dare I say it, the age profile of a lot of us in local government is fairly high. So we'll move on, members. Cumbria County Council have continued to host the scrutiny arrangements for the LEP throughout 2021 in partnership with our district council colleagues. In March 2021, the Chief Executive and Chair of the LEP attended to meetings to ensure members were up to date on the following areas: the reboot, restart and rethink implementation update, the EU exit transition support and the LEP overview. In September, the board had an economic update, and we also had an update on labour supply skills market and the support for businesses going forward in these challenging times. These items were requested so the board could be assured that the LEP were fulfilling the great need for businesses throughout Cumbria to be supported at this time of uncertainty due to the UK's exit from the EU and the ongoing COVID pandemic. In addition, information has been shared from the Chief Executive of the LEP on recovery planning and the LEP review. This has been welcomed and valuable in providing context and progression updating for members of the board, strengthening the scrutiny activity further. The board has effectively scrutinised LEP plans with the focus being at a strategic level as set out at the outset. Links with the chair and the chief executive of the LEP remain very strong, and I would like to personally thank Richard and Joe for their commitment to inform and keep members up to date on the continuing challenging landscape of business activity here in Cumbria. The partnership working has ensured that scrutiny are able to provide added value, which we will continue to build on throughout 21-22. And before I finish, Joe, I would just like to thank all those 4 businesses for sharing their views over the last hour, because I'm very interested in where the LEP funding has actually made a difference. And I'm really pleased to see that the LEP funding has made a huge difference to help secure and grow these businesses. So congratulations to LEP going forward. And as for the young gentleman who gave that little report before, let's hope you may looking at local government participation in the next few years. Thank you, Chair.
Bill, thank you ever so much. And, thank you for recognising the LEP's contribution to our business community. Very much appreciated. And hugely impressed that local government are seriously looking to address the demographic challenge, even live in our AGM. So Well done, Bill, you. And Morgan, I think somebody's trying to encourage you to apply to be a councillor. I'll leave that one up to you. Right. Yeah, have a ponder. So big thank you to Bill and the team, the governance team in the County Council and all of their other local authorities put a huge amount of time into the scrutiny process. So hugely appreciated from the LEP. And I'd now like to hand over to Nigel Wilkinson, who is the chair of our Finance, Audit and Resources Committee, for what, as everybody knows who's attended AGMs in previous years, is the highlight of the AGM meeting.
So thank you, Joe. And before I move into the detail, first of all, to those of you who've been avidly reading the minutes of the meeting on the 18th of September 2020, and we're looking to a new face to present the accounts this year, I'm very sorry to disappoint you because you've got me again. I now want to start with saying some thanks before we get into the detail. First of all, I would like to thank my colleagues on the Finance, Audit and Remuneration Committee who served during the last financial year. So thanks to Dr. Steve Curl, to Sarah Swindley and Professor Andrew Wren. Subsequent to the year end, we've had some changes on the committee, but many thanks to my colleagues. I would also like to thank the executive team for their maintenance of the company's accounting records, to Armstrong Watson Chartered Accountants for preparing our management accounts, and to David Allen, Chartered Accountants and Registered Auditor, for auditing our statutory accounts and for the other audits they conduct. I also want to thank those Cumbrian organisations that have provided financial secondment and/or in-kind support to CLEP, namely, and in no particular order, Sellafield Limited, BAE Systems Marine Limited, Cumbria County Council, Allerdale Borough Council, Barrow Borough Council, Carlisle City Council, Copeland Borough Council, Eden District Council, and South Lakeland District Council. Many thanks. Without you, we couldn't have delivered the accounts you're going to see. So on to the practicalities, Joe. Our financial year is the 31st of March each year. This is the second set of audited accounts for CLEP as a standalone limited company. We effectively started operating from the 1st of April 2019, and so this is our second full year of operations. The accounts were signed off by the board on the 23rd of July, and at that time, we confirmed that in our opinion, the company was a going concern for the 12 months from the date that the accounts were signed. That was a view that was endorsed by our auditors, David Allen. As part of the audit, no material weaknesses were identified in our accounting systems or our internal control measures. There were no significant findings from the audit to report, and there were no unadjusted items for the auditors to report. So a clean bill of health. So what did the figures show? In terms of our income and expenditure for the year, we had originally planned to deliver a balanced budget. But early in the year, the impact of COVID-19 was absolutely apparent to the board. And so we took the decision to effectively release 100,000 of our income and expenditure reserve to allow us to deliver additional support to address the COVID crisis. So in front of you there, you have the deficit for the year before tax, 100,820, corporation tax of £29 payable on our bank interest receivable, and therefore a deficit for the year of £100,849. And that was planned. And again, great credit to the executive that they delivered in accordance with our revised budget. So where were we at the end of the financial year? We've just gone to the balance sheet. This is the balance sheet here. We've got net assets of £609,000. That is split into a restricted reserve, a contingency reserve, and a revenue reserve. But as you can see from the balance sheet, we had strong and positive net current assets, and pleased to report that the company is a going concern. For those of you who want more details, a copy of these accounts and the full accounts for the company are filed at Companies House and are available online. And Chair, if anybody has any questions, I will be happy to take them afterwards. Thank you.
Nigel, thank you ever so much. And as Nigel said, he was persuaded to stay on for a further year because he's done such a brilliant job in chairing FARC. So I know that Lord Inglewood would certainly echo my thanks and appreciation. The next item on the agenda before we get to questions and answer is a forward look from myself. And I think we are, as you'll see from my first slide, probably living in the most interesting times that most of us can remember. And we start with the apocryphal Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. So what we've been looking at is probably the most serious pandemic we've had in a century. We've been looking at EU exit having massive and fundamental changes on our trading relationships. And as a consequence, our business community are probably facing some of the biggest challenges that they've faced in a very, very long time. So one of the things that we've done is we regularly do economic impact assessments. Over the past couple of months, we've done our most significant assessment since 2019, which was when we produced our local industrial strategy. And this is very much hot off the press, so it's still being developed and tidied and tweaked. But if we look where we are over the past almost couple of years now, the last 18 months has been a roller coaster on Cumbria's economy, predominantly due to COVID-19. The economy in Cumbria broadly shrunk in line with the UK, which was some 9 to 10%. We've had very different effects by sectors, and because our sectors tend to be concentrated in particular geographies, that also has made a significant impact of where things have been worst felt. The thing that has really helped cushion the blow has been the furlough scheme and all of the borrowing that government has taken out to support businesses through the challenges. And just to pick on furlough, at one point, Cumbria had the highest level of furlough of any geography in the country in South Lakeland, and in Eden, the third highest level. So there's been a serious impact on Cumbria's business base. In terms of, we look at what's happened with COVID, and we then add on top of that EU exit. So as we said, it's been a real conflation of lots of different issues coming together. So what we're seeing as there is national economic recovery is demand for products and services from businesses. As we've had restrictions on overseas travel, one of the things that has been a positive is we've seen lots more domestic tourism and visitor, which has been benefiting Cumbria and the Lake District. However, and you'll have seen this all over the national media, the challenges of that sudden growth has resulted in serious staff and labour shortages, which is impacting on output, recovery and growth for many businesses. And it's due to a number of factors. We've got an excellent economist and analyst. Our analyst is saying it's never, ever been so difficult to understand what's happening in labour markets as currently. So we've had a loss of EU workers, and you'll have heard Grant Shapps this morning saying that 6 million people were granted settled or pre-settled status. Unfortunately, most of them aren't here. We've seen lots of UK workers rethink life post-furlough and decide on different career options or even different lifestyle choices. And we're seeing lots of shift in demand. So a movement away from people going to retail centres to increasingly looking at home delivery. And in the report we've done, you'll see some of the massive shifts that have happened over the past 18 months. So combination of these things is leading to supply shortage, inflationary pressures, and tax hikes on businesses. So we're looking at the increase in national insurance, energy prices, wages, and the challenge is it short or long term? The other big issue is that there is clearly a level of indebtedness in our businesses that didn't exist pre-COVID. And we know for the numbers that we've seen of things like bounce back loans and CBILS in Cumbria, our businesses have had no choice other than to take out those loans. So the big key issues in Cumbria, the thing that's quite interesting is that most of these we had already flagged and anticipated in the local industrial strategy. In terms of productivity gap, there's no currently evidence that it's worsening further. So we feel that productivity, whilst not where we want it to be, has not been massively damaged. And going forward, we may see improvements in productivity as a consequence of addressing other things. The looming labour shortages, I mentioned earlier, we've got the slowest growing population of any LEP area in England. We also have our highest level of outward migration in 18 to 24-year-olds. So we knew labour was going to be a challenge. It's now come here with a massive bang, with every sector genuinely struggling. We knew that we had some cold spots of deprivation and worklessness. They've remained throughout COVID, but the labour issues make addressing these much more urgent. And connectivity issues, you know, we're half of the geography of the northwest of England with less than 1/10 of its population. Connectivity is always going to be really important for our geography. So we've looked at a number of scenarios, and I won't go into the detail of these because it's Friday afternoon and people want to ask us questions. But we've looked that we are basically using the recent Experian projections that are based on trends, and that our sort of growth is going to be constrained by workforce. And that's the purple line, maroon line, in terms of jobs and GVA growth. We've looked at applying national growth in line with change by sector and assume that we're not constrained by the workforce. So we're then looking at the green line. And the third one is that labour shortages are addressed by improved productivity and increasing wages, which basically gives us the turquoise assumptions. So moving quickly forward, in terms of the longer term, we've done a pestle analysis to say, if we look at some of the longer term issues, are they good or bad for Cumbria? So clearly levelling up agenda, policy and funding, does that offer an opportunity? Question mark. Net zero carbon, we are a net contributor to the electricity grid. This is potentially a really big option. Until very recently, you'll know we had the world's largest offshore wind farm. We've got further consents. We've got the application for a spherical tokamak for energy production. Real opportunities. What can we do to onshore? To respond to some of the supply chain challenges, how do we grow our own businesses to deliver on those? We've talked about technology and the role that technology can play in actually supporting recovery and finding different ways of working, manufacturers moving to 4.0, etc. And we discussed this at the board this morning, and somebody said the phrase digital nomad needs to be the phrase of the day. Working and living patterns are changing. What opportunities does that give to Cumbria? However, we've got to balance that with future government finances and tax and debt, our ageing population, and the serious issues currently facing social and healthcare. We've also got a north of the border opportunity, but also a potential competition. Investment in economic growth in Scotland is much higher per head of population than it is in England. So that's both an opportunity in terms of proximity, but also potentially a challenge. And the other question is, are our business and communities prepared for technology-driven changes? So in terms of the short term, and I think all of the conversations that we have with business feels very much in this place at the minute. We've had conversations with our business and economic response and recovery group that have suggested probably in the past 8 weeks, at times, it's felt more difficult than any point in the pandemic. So the staff recruitment and retention is absolutely massive, particularly in hospitality, health, social care and logistics. So really need some new solutions to that. Financial effects of COVID are being felt very, very acutely by our businesses. We've debated this one. Bank of England inflation figures. We've been flagging for months and months to government that our businesses didn't feel inflation was a temporary blip. They felt it was something more long-term. This morning, I heard the reporting saying the Bank of England no longer regards this as an anecdotal local issue. It is saying that we are probably looking at this in medium term and also in adjusting its forecast to 4%. Supply chain issues are being felt quite hard by our businesses, and there is breakdown in some elements of this. We've got businesses that used to work on a 4-week delivery timescale. They're now working at 44 weeks. These are significant changes. Post-EU trading arrangements, we think it's all gone quiet. The reality is lots of business are beavering away, dealing with lots and lots of issues to manage to trade with Europe. We've already talked about the priority to extend digital skills and digital connectivity. And finally, working with our rural sector to absorb all of the changes that they're currently going through. So a lot for our businesses to deal with. And I think all I would like to say is that we continue to work on behalf of our businesses to flag issues, to encourage government to develop new policy and investment solutions. And on the ground, we are here to provide whatever advice and support is needed through our business support services. So thank you. And now I would like to put away the slides and turn to our question and answer session. And clearly you've already met the panel. They sat on the table with me. And we're also going to be, I would hope, joined by Andrew Wren, if he's still with us, if there are any questions relevant to skills. So it'd be wonderful if Andrew could look to join us. Yeah, brilliant. So in terms of our Q&A, we offered the opportunity for people to raise questions throughout the meeting. You've all been very shy, so please don't be shy. There's still time for you to post your questions. And as we look through what's been received, I think the first one is from Abigail Roberts. Can we have a link to the Cumbria's economy report that the chair mentioned just now? Absolutely. We're doing some final tweaks, Abby, and we will then put it on our website and we'll make sure that you get a personal copy. So that's a very easy one. We've then got a comment, and this was clearly for one of our presenters earlier, saying they live in Kendal and the building looks fabulous and has tidied up that area of Kendal. So that's a big thank you to Donovan, who sadly is not here to hear it, but we'll make sure it's fed back to him. Janet Walker's asked a question and this is for Andrew Wren, regarding wider representation. I'd like to see some figures other than gender. Andrew, do you want to start with that question? And I'll happily chip in if needed.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, Janet. And the reason we focus on age is that we have a target set for us by government. Sorry about gender, I apologise. We have a target set for us to achieve gender equality by 2023. So that's why we focus on the figures for that. But clearly it's much broader than gender representation. And that's something that I'm particularly passionate about, making sure that all protected characteristics are represented on the board, which isn't always easy in a county like Cumbria. It doesn't necessarily have the ethnic diversity that other counties do. I mean, Joe will be able to add some more in terms of the actual figures, but you know, just to reassure you that it's not just all about gender or age. Indeed, looking at the Futures Forum, though that's clearly very important to us. Joe, I don't know if you can enlighten a little bit further on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is, Janet, most of our groups are advisory. So when you're dealing with advisory volunteer members, given the time freely, we can't really be saying, oh, would you mind completing this, you know, statement around all of your personal characteristics. But I think what we can see very clearly by observation is that the age profile of the LEP's governance structure has significantly reduced. So we've got a much wider age profile. We also know that we've worked very hard to get people from different geographies. In terms of the gender, and as Andrew said, we're not focused exclusively on gender. We have got 4 of our sector panels actually now chaired by females, of which there are 8. So we've achieved 50%. And I think what we do need to do going forward is be very clear about where we're underrepresented and develop mechanisms to address that. So Janet, very happy you are one of our board members and would really love to pick this up in terms of our review and plan for the next year. So thank you for that question, and thank you for Andrew. Yeah, of course.
Get people to apply. Different sorts of people. You can't appoint them unless they want to be appointed.
Thank you, Richard. In terms of the next question, I've got something from Nick Turner. And Nick, I actually think the person who's probably well placed to answer this one is Nigel, because he's very acutely aware of this as an issue. So Nigel, the question is, do you have a view about the impact on Cumbria of the significant number of people moving into the county to live while doing jobs remotely elsewhere in the UK? And estate agents told Nick it accounts for 50% of his sales. Clearly there's positives, but surely it undermines the recruitment message we've used for a while. Get a job in Cumbria for a fantastic lifestyle. Now people can have a job in Manchester or London and the Cumbrian lifestyle. So it's a mixture of issues, starting with the housing and moving to wider, where do you choose to live and work?
Absolutely. And I think I would echo that there are some tremendous positives. The ability to work, and some high net worth individuals relocating to the county, and that's positive. But what we've got to look at is the overall, because those people will bring their service needs, and we've got to have a balance in the economy to be able to deliver that. I think we will see going forward that housing is an absolute critical issue for this county. It's very much something that I think policymakers and planners need to be acutely aware of. I operate within the visitor economy, and part of our labour crisis is being exacerbated by a shortage of housing in certain sectors, particularly in the rental sector, because during 2020 and 2021, many properties have been turned over to short-term lets for holiday accommodation. So I think it's really important that we think carefully about the consequences. Yeah, warm welcome, but there are practical implications for this happening. And what very much I hope is that people moving into the county, even if they are working remotely, they will engage within the Cumbrian economy as well. Because I think that's vitally important that we're all engaged in the Cumbrian economy, that they understand the issues and they help us develop policies that will retain our youth in Cumbria. So, yeah, it's a development that's here and it's here to stay. I think what we've got to fully do is understand the implications of it and act accordingly.
Thank you, Nigel. Any other panel members like to add anything to that question?
I think Joe underlines the importance of the housing debate that we're having. I think it's so, and certainly on the south west of the peninsulas, our challenges we have in Barrow and Furness, we've seen a complete change of both the positive. We can now remotely support people working from anywhere in Cumbria and actually appeal to people nationally as well for a contribution for a large scale business in Cumbria. But the flip side, Nigel, as you say, I think is how do we provide the adequate and affordable and accessible housing that's going to be needed for the workers and the opportunities for careers in Cumbria itself. So housing will be vital.
I think that we know a bit about the problem because we've had it, particularly in areas like the Lake District, for a long time. It hasn't been resolved properly because I think there are two slightly different aspects to this. The first one is there are a lot of jobs that are very, very important to this county, which aren't especially highly paid. And people who are here now cannot afford to get on the housing ladder. Now, if you live in a society where owning your own house is an important component of the wider economy, that's a problem. That's problem one. Problem two is that if you find, as suggested, increasingly demand from people who work elsewhere to live here, that's a slightly, they'll be earning much more money than people working here. That's a slightly different problem. And I think we need to bear in mind the distinction in thinking about the issues with a view to trying to find solutions. I think it's going to be extremely difficult.
I think there are also opportunities for us here as well, because whilst remote working is fantastic and can facilitate new lifestyle choices, I do think there's something about that kind of social connection that people have in workplaces, that it may be people come here and then look to their local community to say, what are the opportunities, what are the skills I've got that can contribute here, and what are the businesses I can start to work with or even set up and establish in the county as well. So I think if we've got the right landscape and the right opportunities, then we will have increasing talent in the county that this brings, but we've got to be poised to maximise that, I think.
Thank you. And we did actually get some, sorry, Andrew.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to add a couple of points. I completely agree with what all the panellists have said. Working with young people, as I do, another issue that sort of sits alongside it is to try and slow down the outward migration of young people. And we do tend to find that many of Cumbria's young people leave to go to university, for example, at 18 or for jobs elsewhere, and then and never return. If they do return, it's much later in life. So that's sort of a parallel issue. And of course, there's also a flip side to the question that Nick asked, and that is we also see in certain areas the complete reverse of what he's describing, and that is that migrant workers coming into Cumbria to do skilled jobs and then leaving at the weekend and sort of taking their disposable income with them. So we've got a variety of problems sitting alongside each other, but I completely agree with what you've said and the comments, and Steve's right, housing is absolutely critical in this.
Thank you very much, Andrew. We had some questions posed beforehand, and don't worry, it's Friday afternoon, I'm watching the clock for you. And my friend Simon Schenitzer from Tetra Tech wins the prize for the longest question. And this is going to be taken by Steve and Lord Inglewood. Last month, we saw the BBC report into how some areas in the UK are making economic development decisions for major infrastructure projects and failing to take carbon emissions into account against net zero targets. He's seen arguments there needs to be a balance in making these decisions, but as the recent IPCC report points out, we have been hitherto incapable of providing that balance. What's the LEP's view on this, and how can we be assured that future projects will mitigate against this risk? Steve, you first, please.
Thank you. And Simon, great question, very pertinent and very relevant at this stage. As you've heard, and I think we'll have to demonstrate this in not just in our words, but in our deeds and actions. Decarbonising the economy of Cumbria is a critical priority for us. And that remains now at the heart of the strategy that will be laid into all of the actions we take and all of the assessments we make over how we help businesses manage the challenges of recovery and achieve sustainability. So that's the first thing. Decarbonising is a priority, and Lord Inglewood mentioned earlier that that's one of two parts of our net zero strategy, the other one being the generation of clean energy, of course. A big part of that is the construction industry itself and the embedded carbon that we see in buildings. And are we assessing the credentials of schemes that are looking for investment with regards to a better understanding of their carbon impacts? And I really welcome some of the data that's been developed and coming forward publicly, and the recognition now that we have to expect that we all need to look at the credibility of schemes in the lens of the impact that we have around developments, big infrastructure developments, and work with the construction industry on promoting those schemes that are more effective at understanding that risk, bringing forward innovation, looking at alternative construction methods, looking at reuse schemes, trying to use existing buildings more effectively rather than turning to demolition as the first choice. So I think there's a number of criteria emerging that we will need to reflect in time now into our decisions that we take around investments. And I also welcome government policy emerging in this area to help us underpin those decisions, and we'll be working with all of the key stakeholders on promoting that objective. I think that's how I'd put it. Lord Inglewood?
Yes, thanks, Steve. I mean, the first thing that we're clear is that we are committed to the government's zero carbon, net zero carbon targets, and are committed to them. That's however a slightly lib reply, because one of the problems we face is still that there's an awful lot of uncertainty about exactly what that entails in detail and in reality. Our approach is very much a nuts and bolts pragmatic one. We're actually interested in carbon reduction. We're not interested in following will-o'-the-wisp fanciful notions about the topic, of which there are quite a lot about in the wider world. I think the other thing we need to remember in discussing this topic, that we're talking about net carbon zero, and it is that the human race cannot continue on this earth if you simply end carbon emissions. It's partly a matter of doing that, obviously, but at the same time, because humanity can't go on, because it by definition emits carbon, we've also got to be equally committed to dealing with decarbonisation, as Steve said.
Thank you, Lord Inglewood. Two rapid fire questions, one for Nigel and one for Sarah, and then we will actually wrap things up. So first one is from Ian Stevens at the University of Cumbria. And the question for you, Nigel, is what are the key projects that will help disperse visitors from the busy central Lake District towns?
Well, thanks, Ian. Attract and disperse is an absolute key priority of our strategic thinking. It's at the core of the LEP's Visitor Economy Sector Panel Work Plan, and also other bodies such as the Tactical Visitor Management Group, chaired by Cumbria Police, in which the LEP participate, who are dealing with COVID recovery. So what we've got to have, and very much I'm pleased that we're getting, is a willingness for areas outside the central core of the national park to receive visitors, infrastructure, marketing and funding. Now, getting the funding sorted is a little bit challenging. We were hopeful that the tourism sector deal and the designation of tourism zones might have assisted, but sadly now we've moved on to the government's tourism recovery plan. That opportunity isn't there. But there has been some real progress made in 2021. COVID's acted as a catalyst, and probably the best example I will point you to, Ian, is the motorhome strategy, formulated and delivered by Cumbria Tourism, working with partners, particularly our local authorities and the National Park, which has turned a challenge, motorhomes, into an opportunity. And so I'm really encouraged that out of COVID, we've got some positive developments. It gives us something to build on, but rest assured, Ian, we're carrying on the work that you started years ago, and Attract and Disperse is central to it.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Final question for Sarah. How can people engage with the digital transformation strategy? And that's from Andrew Burrell at Enable Success.
Thank you, Jo. Well, I think it's been writ large through so much of what we've talked about today, how important our digital future is, how much it underpins our ability to do business and grow in the future. Our digital strategy has three main strands. It's pretty straightforward to articulate, maybe harder to deliver. That's about enabling business. So that's thinking about infrastructure, innovation. It's about enabling people. So thinking about skills, closing the digital divide, making sure we have full digital inclusion across the county, and also thinking about enabling our communities, which is, again, often about infrastructure. We've got pockets of some of the fastest broadband in the country, in the county, equally pockets where that's absolutely not the case. So how can you help us? I think it's continuing to support us to make the case to government to maintain this as a priority area, help us secure the investment needed to deliver this. It certainly is a priority for LEP.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So it is the time that we're due to finish. So can I say a massive thank you to everybody. We really appreciate you joining us today. We hope you'll be here more or less the same time next year. And before we close, can I hand over to Lord Inglewood to provide the closing few words? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jo. I hope those of you who've lasted the course, or even not lasted the whole course by coming in later, will have found that the meeting has been both illuminating, but also helpful to, in terms of your own activities and also in understanding what it is we are doing. Now, it seems to be absolutely clear that in the terms of the economy, it's going to be hard pounding in Cumbria for the immediate future. We see real changes in front of us. But not only in terms of national framework and the local economic enterprise partnership, but also in terms of a whole range of economic factors at play. And this is bound to cause very considerable uncertainty. However, as Morgan said, this is a great county. There are great opportunities in this great place, and we must seize them, because that is going to be the key to moving on constructively and positively from where we are now. And I'm sure we can. So, as well as thanking you all for attending, we wouldn't have had a very happy afternoon if we'd known there wasn't a single person watching what we're doing. And I would just like to conclude again with my thanks to everybody involved with the LEP, members, staff, and all the people in the wider business economy who freely give of their time and input into our activities. So thank you one and all.
Thank you, everybody.
Happy day.